Today's story comes from Michael in Boulder, Colorado. He had an incredible near-death experience that helped him gain insight into his past and gave his life a new purpose, as well as provided proof that what he experienced was real. I had a near-death experience after a ski accident. I was 50 years old and had gone up to the mountain for the weekend by myself. I was working in sales, consumed by making money and refusing to deal with my life. I had lost my fiancée 2 years earlier. Emma had died of sudden cardiac death. She was vibrant, young, and we had been together for 2 years, but I knew she was the love of my life. We both were never married before. We were both very active people, loved to travel and focused on our careers. We understood each other. She did not have any signs of a heart condition, was in good health and athletic. When I lost her, I drowned myself in work so that I wouldn't have to deal with the feelings of losing her. I was extremely depressed but did not want to admit it. I would work 16-hour days as a way of not shutting the whole world out. Eventually, the CEO of the company noticed, and I was gaining attention because of how much money I was making for him. He knew about loss himself. He had lost his wife to cancer, so he knew what I was doing. He told me I needed to take a break because he wanted to make sure his best salesman wouldn't burn out. He bought me a 2-night stay at one of the nicer hotels near the mountain and lift tickets because he knew I was a skier. I was basically forced to take a break. I used to ski a lot, but since it was something I used to do with Emma, I didn't want to be reminded of her. When I got up to the mountain early Saturday morning in the most perfect skiing conditions and looked at the sunrise at the summit, I felt like she was right there with me. It was a bittersweet moment. It was the first time in 2 years that I thought there was some hope for me, and that maybe I would be able to move on from it and find happiness again. I was about 2 hours into skiing and worked myself up to some of the harder terrain trails. I was going down the trail and then I got hit by someone boarding. I don't know where they came from, but I lost my balance and I started falling fast. I tried to gain control, but I couldn't. I went flying off the edge and I was airborne and could only see snow. Everything was white. I went unconscious for a moment, and when I woke up, I was surprised I didn't feel anything, no pain. I looked at the mountains, but I wasn't buried in snow, and I felt like I was floating. Then I looked around me, but I couldn't see my body at all. I suddenly realized I was having an out-of-body experience. That's when I heard a voice telling me that my body was buried in the snow. I could see a glowing light coming from the snow where my body was buried in the snow, and I became aware I was dying. But I wasn't panicking or worrying. I was calm and just thought, okay. I was completely unattached to who I was, my body, my human form at that time. This voice then guided me towards a vortex of light that was magnetic. I felt attracted to it and was pulled towards it. Then I was immersed in it. It had this force that was indescribable. I became a part of it, and it felt like I no longer had shape or form, like I was a gas that just expanded into the space I was in, and I was connected to everything around me. The sensation was powerful, immense, and I have no idea how long it took because time didn't exist. Then, just as sudden as it happened, it was over. Then I was no longer near the snow, but in this luxurious-looking place in front of 5 magnificent beings. I had recognition of them when I saw them, but they weren't anyone I knew as Mike. I knew them because I had been there before. They looked happy to see me, and one of them said, "Welcome home." They communicated with me by looking at me, and we had conversations psychically. They began to answer the questions I was asking. I already knew that I had died, that I was not on an earthly plane. I didn't have any questions of anything on earth. I had zero attachment to anything I left behind, my work, my family, and they don't like when I say it, but it's true. I knew I existed, but I was in a different form, and it made sense to me even though it shouldn't have from what I knew as a human being at that point. There was a lot of back and forth conversation between us in my thoughts, and they were very patient with me. Then they took me down this very large corridor that looked like it belonged in a palace. Very majestic. I still felt like I was floating smoothly across the place. We reached the end of the corridor, and the beings again were facing me and told me I was about to see my life on Earth, and reasons things happened the way they did. They showed me my childhood, adolescence, and my recent life with Emma. They told me about a soul contract I fulfilled by being with Emma, suffering through her death, and that I was able to help her with her soul's contract as well. They told me she did not suffer in her final moments on Earth, and she was grateful to me for the last 2 years of her life. I felt a feeling of immense love and accomplishment. It was bigger than any accolade or accomplishment I felt before. I felt like my life's mission was complete. Nothing else could match that. You know, when someone says, "I want to die happy," that is how I felt in that moment. I was able to die happy. All the survivor's guilt I had been living with for the past 2 years and regret over her death was gone. Then the being showed me something I had buried even more so than Emma's passing. It was my father. I had not known him growing up. He had left my mother and me before I could talk. Another man, Calvin, raised me, and I called him Dad. He died when I was 30 from pancreatic cancer. One of the things he told me before he died was that I should reach out to my biological father, George. George had reached out a handful of times, but I had never wanted him back in my life. As they're showing me this conversation with him, they're telling me this was my other soul contract. I was supposed to mend this relationship I had with my biological father. They told me I could stay in the realm I was in and continue my spiritual work from this place, or I could go back and try to complete this other contract. At that moment, I didn't really care either way. So I looked at them and I basically asked them which one would be better. They right away said I would be more helpful doing my spiritual work back on Earth. I said, "Okay." And right away, one of the beings led me back to my body. I just moved towards my body and I was back. Right away, I felt the pain, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. The fact that I had been speaking with these spiritual beings made the pain irrelevant at that point. I felt clearer than I had felt in 2 years. I wasn't the same person from that morning, and I knew I could never be the same. The experience I had was completely eye-opening because I was able to see life differently. I was able to see myself as beyond a human being. I was able to acquire a new outlook on life that today I still feel grateful for, because I was stuck in a very concrete, materialistic view of life up until that point. The spiritual beings that I encountered were able to show me how the spiritual realm exists within us. It is in our DNA. Yes, we exist as humans, but we are much more than that, and a lot more powerful. Some people are able to access that power better than others because they are more in tune to that essential quality of soul and spirit. Since my NDE, I've read about other people who have had experiences like mine, and things will jump out at me because I'll remember the same things they felt or saw. I've also had experiences at times when I will hear the voices of the spiritual beings. It is usually random. One night after dinner, I went to a small grocery store near my home. I only needed a couple things in the front of the store, but I heard a voice saying, "Go to the milk." I went to the milk aisle, which was all the way in the back, and I found a woman who was having a seizure. The biggest takeaway I had was the feeling I was never alone. I was told there are always spiritual beings around us, and although I didn't feel the same connection and thoughts I did while I was in the physical plane, I still had an awareness of what was happening here. One question I get asked was if I was able to see Emma when I was there. I didn't get to see her. However, I did feel her presence through the journey I took to that realm. I was able to communicate with her psychically as well when I was with the spiritual beings, so I knew she was there. She thanked me for our time together while she was alive. I felt like I could finally move on. I live my life differently today. I don't consume myself in work like I did before the accident. I was in a lot of pain afterwards. I was luckily spotted by another person. They had seen one of my skis above the snow and helped dig me out. I broke my clavicle and a few ribs, as well as had a punctured lung. I look back on my previous life and remind myself of the gifts I have received in the form of people in my life. I was also able to make amends to my father. I took ownership of the fact that I had turned down his attempts to reach me and accepted that no one is perfect. About 2 months after we spoke, he had passed away, and I was able to assist his wife with the wake and funeral services. For any of the listeners out there that are struggling in their relationships with family, friends, partners, I hope you make peace with them or amends with these struggles. We never know when that opportunity to make amends will expire. Life is too short to live it angry and resentful. Thank you for watching. If you're intrigued by the mysteries of the mind, subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.